So the forest is just gorgeous right now. I wanted to bring you guys along to share its beauty. I know some of you yourselves live in remarkably beautiful areas, but many of you live in cities where you don't get to see, I don't know, a large gathering, I guess, of colors. The wild winds off of the lake, makes, for me, it's like this. I love it. I love the wind. I love the sound of the fall and the cold that drives the wind off of the Great Lake. There are many, many beautiful lakes, but there's only one Great Lake. That's coming from a state surrounded by Great Lakes, right? But those that live near Lake Superior, that's what they would tell you. Alright, so there's Gus. He's fat and sassy. He's doing really good. He loves to be outside playing. I don't like him to have sticks. Somehow he got a hold of that one. This summer we did some bucket gardening, and where they're sitting at right there in that vegetable bed is not where they were, but we did have this vegetable bed with tomatoes in it this year. These are some of our raspberries. We have 3 different patches. This is our heirloom. It's got, let's see, we got heirloom, and I think we got some Killarney in this one. But you can see the heirloom are ever-bearing. They keep bearing throughout the season, so that's really nice. Where our Latham patch only bears like once. I love the fall, and the old saying that you cannot see the forest for the trees is so true. We have a time in the fall, about 2 or 3 days, where the leaves have been turning for weeks, but the large majority have fallen off of the lower part of the trees. And the upper part stays really full. Some of the golden hues are on the lower part still, but the sunshine that comes through, it like reveals the forest. You can see deep into the forest and the leaves at the same time. So otherwise in the fall or in the summer when it's really full and the ground covering's full, you can't see, 10 feet into the forest. And then after all the leaves are gone, all you see is bare tree. So that's those 3 days, or that time where the seasons are culminating together. It's really a beautiful time. Oh, I just love this weather. It's like balm to the soul. All right, so it's starting to get cold. Now we've been had crazy weather, guys. We've been, you know, just like rest of the nation in the 80s. And what's weird though is for us, by this time of year, we're down in the 40s on average. And yeah, we've broken 2 records that have stood in this area just in the last 2 weeks, I think it was. But then we'll drop down to the normal temps, and so fires are burning, and not just so I can warm up water, but so the house can stay warm. Yesterday was crazy. It was like 74 degrees. Now the good thing about this temperature is the heat is real dry, so I can still keep a fire going for my household needs, and it doesn't affect us. Keep the windows open, and it's all well. But now it's getting cold. I'm cold out here walking in just a shirt. Just never know which way you need to dress. Have fans on at night, or because we have battery operated fans. Boy, I'd be crazy lost without those things. I hate sleeping when it's warm. Or, you know, not have fans going. You just don't know from one night to the next. Simi's big question is, Mama, do I need the fan going tonight? So, all right, well, I'm going to head on inside. So today I decided to make some Dunkin' Donuts. Not Dunkin' like as in the brand, but Dunkin' as in like the coffee. Dunkin' Donuts. When I was a kid, I did not like when my great aunt and uncle would come visit, and they'd go to the large local grocery store, and they would buy these glazed sticks from the bakery, and because they wanted them for their donuts. I wanted the, 1980s, I wanted the donuts, like with the chocolate and stuff on it. But years later, I came to think about those, and I could remember the taste. Isn't it funny as we get older that those things happen? I could remember the taste, but it had been decades since I'd had one. And not only that, I knew I didn't like them all those years ago, but that taste seemed so incredibly good in my mind that I just had to find a recipe that would bring it alive, I guess. And this is it. So this is a traditional cake donut. And the thing that triggers this flavor is nutmeg. They are a fried donut. So the recipe calls for 1 cup of granulated sugar. In a pinch, I have used brown sugar in this, and it is still good. But the original recipe here is for granulated sugar. And then it calls for 4 teaspoons of baking powder. Now, if you've watched any of my older videos on cooking, I prefer to use a homemade baking powder mixture. And that's just a preference of mine. So you use about a teaspoon of salt. And then for the baking powder mixture, which again, the recipe calls for 4 teaspoons of baking powder, I replace it with 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And then I use 2 teaspoons of cream of tartar. And then I use a tablespoon of cornstarch. The cornstarch is really the secret. You can use your baking soda and your cream of tartar and not use any cornstarch, but there's something about cornstarch in baked goods that really, just a little bit, it doesn't have to be a lot, that makes a difference in the end product. So then I use a tablespoon of nutmeg. I think the original recipe called for a teaspoon. We love nutmeg though, and a tablespoon. It's by the time when these donuts sit, which is what they really need to do to get the full flavor working together. So I usually let them sit for about at least overnight, if not 24 hours. But so that tablespoon starts to get, you can actually taste it. You could put a little more in if you wanted. Yeah. We use a 1/4 cup of melted shortening or lard. I use a palm oil or palm shortening is my preference. I have used butter, but they make it a little, they don't turn out quite as nice. About a tablespoon of vanilla or however much you think is necessary. But the recipe calls for a tablespoon. Then you use 2 eggs. You mix that together. I do it by hand. I don't know if if the mixer has a low speed, it would probably work. Now, one of the things about this donut recipe is it's pretty versatile. So I put in part of the flour first, and then I get it mixed up. Then I'll add some of the milk mixture that I use, and then I put in the rest of the flour. Now, with your milk, you can turn that into sweet milk by using a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, and to me, that makes an amazing texture. That's my favorite way to do it. Saya is having problems processing the apple cider vinegar lately, though, so I just used whole milk, straight whole milk, but really sweetening the milk is just incredible. So you could use like buttermilk. Another thing you can do with this, if you don't have whole milk and you have plain yogurt in your refrigerator or sour cream, you can replace that liquid with a cup of that. That makes a really nice end product too. But again, my favorite is the milk with a tablespoon of vinegar. Apple cider vinegar, raw apple cider vinegar, to be clear. You just mix it up really well. If the dough is going to be sticky, but it should be more or less shapeable. You might need to add a little more flour. In this batch, because I'm doing a voiceover here, I should have added a little more flour. It was a little too sticky, and so the donuts weren't quite as dense as I like them. But, you know, a lot of this stuff with cooking is you just got to work with the product. It might not turn out the way you want it to at first, and even after you get it down, you might be in a hurry and forget what you did special the last time. Well, this is my ice box that I can only use part of the year, but the temperatures are getting cold enough now that I can use it, and we're so grateful for it, as it's got so much good storage in it in the cooler weather or in the cold weather. That's our little propane refrigerator right there. It's small, but it is a lifesaver. I wanted to show you too, that's how it cools. Our ice box cools in the winter. That hole there with the screen on it, it gives us a way to adjust the temperature inside. We have a piece of cork that we put in there, and we open it or close it depending on how cold it is outside. So for frying, my big box of palm shortening that I got from Azure, usually by Spectrum, in the little containers, but this month we got this in our order from Azure actually last month, and it's really good price, and I do like the product itself. So I'm not a big fryer. We don't do a lot of frying. I'll fry donuts, and once in a while I will fry meat, but it's not very often. And I don't save my oil because, again, I don't fry a lot. I just don't reuse it. I put about enough in there to get me through that frying adventure. I have done more frying this year because we love these cake donuts so much. But it's still, it'll wear off, and we won't fry hardly anymore for a while. We like most of our meat baked or fried on the stovetop without extra fat. So if you're not familiar with donuts, you know, if the closest you've got to making donuts is stopping in at your bakery. Let me explain the 2 different types of donuts. You've got yeast donuts and you've got cake donuts. The yeast donuts are the real light ones. I think Krispy Kreme is probably famous for yeast donuts. My family's probably the only people in America that's never had a Krispy Kreme donut. Which is totally fine by us, but that's the type of a donut, a yeast donut is. And you often come in circles with the donut holes, or if you make the old-fashioned donuts, they're the twist donuts. But then there's the cake donuts. Those are heavy. They're done basically, and you can bake the cake donuts. Those are made with the baking powder, where the yeast donuts obviously are made with the yeast. But these cake donuts are typically more dense and resemble more of a heavy cake or a cupcake. I have had batter left over where I didn't feel like frying it up, and I ended up baking it in the oven, and it was basically, like a cake, and all was good there. My guys ate it. So after the dough cools, I roll the dough out into sticks. I don't like to do donut holes on the cake donuts. To me, they take longer to fry. I roll stuff out about 1/4 inch thick and cut them into strips or even cubes and throw them in the hot oil. So I like to fry on my Magic Chef stove more than I do my wood stove. I can control the temperature more. One way I check my oil is that I throw a little bit of flour in it, and if it bubbles, then I know that I'm probably more than likely ready to start frying. So I know it looked like a lot of shortening I was putting in there until it melted down, and you'll see, I probably won't show you the last fry batch just because it was too much video for that, but it uses the majority of the oil. You'll see how that floats up. That tells you that the oil is just about the right temperature, and you're not cooking these for very long. You put them in, and by the time you get like the last one in, it's almost time, if your oil's right, to flip them puppies over. And then by the time you get the last one flipped over, it's time to start pulling out the first ones. So now in this batch, you want them to, if you overcook them, if you get them too dark, they're not very good. My dogs love them, but I don't like them like that. So I'm looking for a nice golden brown, flip them, wait for them to get golden brown on the other side, and I pull them out. Now this first batch was not quite as brown as I like. It was good, and it was a fine texture. But the second batch you'll see is much browner. So you can see that one didn't want to flip over. Those could have been a little browner, but they were still cooked all the way through. They weren't mushy. But this next batch, so when I take them out, I drain them. I will use paper towels if I have them. It used to be years ago when I was younger, I never bought paper towels. And that's one of the conveniences as I've aged, that for the past 2 years, I just let myself have that indulgence and don't even count the cost. I used to not buy them because, one, this just comes in real handy. So, but if you don't use paper towels, you can drain them on a rag or a towel. And I'll be honest, with that, I would pick, I buy cheap wash rags, washcloths. I would end up throwing out the rag just because it was too greasy to mess with. But again, because we don't fry often, that was a couple of times a year back then. This year's the first year I've probably done more frying than just a couple times a year. Now, the second batch you can see is browner, and that's really the target color to go for. All right, so now on to the glaze. The glaze is just simple. It is powdered sugar, butter, vanilla, a dash of salt, and milk. You can even use water in this glaze. I do like milk mainly because it gives a creamier texture. You're looking for something thin to dip your donuts in. You can melt your butter. You can leave it, as long as it's soft, you can just work it in like you would a regular frosting and then just thin it out a little more. So for size-wise comparison, let's say a half a stick of butter in here, a dash of salt. I don't know how many cups is in one of those smaller bags of powdered sugar, but anywhere from 1 to 1.5 of those. And then you work all that in, and then you get the milk, start pouring the milk in and just work it over through texture. I would probably say I started here with 1/4 of a cup, knowing I would need more, but I like to work it into a paste and then a thick cream, because that does help if there's any chunks in the powdered sugar to get them out that way. So just work and cream until you get the texture you want, and I'll show you here in a minute when I start dunking the donuts what I'm looking for. On to the donut dunking. I have my donuts, when you dunk those, you want them to be warm, not hot, not cold. Try to get them when they're warm. Put them on a cooling rack. Those things are going to drip. You can see I have parchment paper on my cellar's counter, and because that stuff's going to drip through. I was sure many of you can probably somehow save the dripping frosting, but I have not figured it out yet. And honestly, I'm not worried about it. Again, it's because this is a treat and not a regular thing. Now, if I was doing this regularly, yeah, we'd probably be figuring out some different ways. But so you just dunk and you set aside and let them cool. Now, it is so important. I can't emphasize this enough. If you want the most flavor, the best experience, let the frosting set up and let them cool completely to that it's not frosting, what do you want to call it? Drizzle, glaze, probably glaze, till that glaze sets up. And then let those things sit overnight if you can wait, because that taste becomes phenomenal at that point. And the weight just enhances. But my guys love them. And they're a great fall treat, especially with the nutmeg. If you're like us, we are crazy about nutmeg. All right, and there they are. I got the fan there because we had such that warm weather I talk about in this video, and we had another outburst of forest flies, so I had to have the fan on there so they wouldn't sit on there. There's our babies waiting for a donut. They get a treat. This kind of gives you the frosting the glaze has set, the texture. Like I said, see, those are a little airier than what I normally like, and that was because I didn't have enough flour in it. So if you guys like the flavor and you're not sure about the texture, there's ways to work around it. But this is an old-fashioned donut, an old-fashioned cake donut. They are phenomenally good. All right, guys, so I guess that's it for this video. Quick tour. As you can tell, it's been a few hours since I did that tour video. It's like many more of the leaves have come to the ground. But anyways, so that was the cake donut video. Hope you guys enjoy it. If you try it, please, 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 please be sure to be patient and let them sit overnight. And refrigerate them if you're not going to freeze them, because there's something about that really heightens that nutmeg. And they are just fabulous when you do that. I don't really like them when they are first done until they have time to set. It just has not been enough time for the flavors to culminate together, for that drizzle or that frosting, whatever you want to call it, icing to get really good and firm. And those are like the dunking donuts of my youth that I used to turn my nose up at because they didn't have the chocolate or the sprinkles I wanted when I was a teenager. So, all right, guys, it's been great seeing you. Glad you hung in there with me and visited us for this video. Until next time, may the Lord bless you.